Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: ex-racists of Reddit, what made you change your mind? Sesame Street. I'm not even joking. Was raised in a slightly racist household in a pretty racist state. Seeing kids of all colors playing together made me wonder why my mom wouldn't let me play with certain people. It kind of snowballed from there. Edit: I am so happy that my top post is about Sesame Street's war on racism. I was a baby when Sesame Street premiered. We lived in a small rural town that was 97% white and recognized two religions, Catholic and Protestant. My favorite character was Gordon and my favorite activity was counting in Spanish. My conservative parents tried so hard, and they got a 7-year Jimmy Carter supporter who grew up to be a civil rights activist. None of us made the connection until recently, but Sesame Street literally broke the cycle of biracial racism in families like mine. I'm surprised they even recognized Catholics, honestly. Growing up in a major city and moving to the South, I never realized there were people in red states who didn't consider Catholics real Christians. My whole family is quite racist. When I was little, I was trying to wrap my head around the rules of the world, so I thought it was as simple as different teams. Blacks vs whites was just like the Red Sox vs the Tigers. Then my grandmother starts going on about how horrible Polish people are and how I'm never to talk to them. So I'm psyched. Screw those Polish people, whatever color they are, we're mortal enemies. Then she points out our Polish neighbor to me. But she's white. I point out to my grandmother that she's white, so we're on the same team. My grandmother says no, that she's a mixed breed. I point out that my great-granddad was a Shoshone Indian and that I'm a mixed breed. She says that doesn't count. That's when I realized she was just making up the rules and I wasn't going to play games with someone who couldn't stick to the rules. Just curious, but why did your grandma hate Poles? 200 years ago, someone stole a pig. That person was Polish. Mortal enemies ever since. Yes. I'm serious. My grandma never forgave her sister for marrying a Pole, lol. Was raised in a racist and close community. When I joined the army and met different people. Dude, I'm glad that the army can have this kind of effect. Is this the US? Edit: I get it, we all have opinions about the military. My family actually has a very bad relationship with military service. I am just happy to know that for some people, it fosters tolerance. Traveling outside your home state /area can have a similar effect. However, I am willing to bet it is accelerated in the military because of the bonds of trust you build with other soldiers. I am only guessing since I have not served. I grew up and moved out of my parents' house. Yeah, I figured out pretty early that my dad was kinda racist when my room would be dirty and he'd say it looks like a bunch of N*** live here. Subtle. Edit: thank you generous Redditor for my first not so subtle silver. Removed. I'm Asian and I grew up kind of resenting my parents for being different than my classmates' parents, and I hated that they didn't know how to speak English. I had to translate for them all the time, call phone companies, go to the DMV with them, translate documents, etc., and I grew resentful. So when I was in elementary school I told them that I wasn't Korean but that I'm a full-fledged American and I wasn't going to speak Korean anymore. I also hated interacting with other Asians that reminded me of my parents. Aka textbook internalized racism. It wasn't until middle school when I had a teacher that validated my culture and actively tried to communicate with my parents that I realized that bilingualism is an asset and something I should be proud of. Now I'm going into teaching and have done some translating work on the side. People say my Korean is super fluent for an American-born Korean and I really have my parent to thank for that. Now I'm super regretful for hurting them like that. Edit: I should note that they are not fluent but can speak conversationally. Edit: yes. I have apologized to my parents about my actions and behavior in the past. The biggest way I was able to so was by dedicating my college commencement speech to them. I'm extremely regretful and sorry for my actions and I still help them with translating and I'm happy to do so. I am incredibly proud of them and as an adult I'm now aware of their sacrifices. Just want to say you're not alone in this. Many Asian Americans face the same problem and have a lot of self-hatred, especially when growing up with the white folks. It's great that you're finally able to embrace your identity. Good on you. TL, Doctor being forced to be racist by family stopped me from actually being racist. Also my mom. I had a super racist grandpa and uncle. Both pieces of shit supported by my grandma. I would frequently stay with them while both my parents worked on Saturdays. I would pretend around them when I was younger because I wanted them to like me. I don't remember this story, but my mom will tell it so proudly if the subject of racism comes up. She was very different from her dad/brother. I was maybe 6 or 7 when one day I was crying when my mom picked me up, and the whole way home I just sobbed like my heart was broken. I wouldn't tell her what was wrong, but I cried quietly the whole way home and went right into my bed and laid down crying. My dad and her came in and asked me what was wrong. I still didn't want to tell them, and my dad got a little gruff with me. Boy, you tell me what's wrong right now. If somebody hurt you or told you not to tell me. And I guess I started crying loudly for the first time and blurted out, Grandpa and Uncle Chuck said I can't be friends with Malcolm anymore because he is a dirty N***********. My uncle made me call him and say that to him. My mom immediately flew into a rage. She went down there and, from what I told, beat the living shit out of her brother, told her dad that I would not be coming over anymore and that he was no longer invited to any family events. She then drove to my friend's house with blood from my uncle's nose still on her shirt. Apologized profusely for what happened and told them the story and that I had been crying the whole time because my uncle made me do that. We had dinner the next day, and instead of going to my grandpa's house on Saturdays I ended up going to my friend Malcolm's house. Note, I say had because my grandpa is dead, and later in life I told my uncle, who never changed, that he's not my uncle anymore when he called my 2-year-old half-Mexican niece *****C. He now has a half-Mexican grandson, but from what I hear he hasn't really changed. Edit, holy shit, this blew up. Did not expect that. Answers to frequent questions. Malcolm and I grew apart when my family moved away. We eventually moved back, but his family had moved by then. I'm not going to type out the full word, but if you Google Mexican slurs you can find it yourself. My mother says she'll adopt all of you, no smoking in the house and don't drink the last Mountain Dew. My grandfather actually did put in an attempt to try after that day. The relationship was eventually repaired before he died in '99. He actually married a former nun and she shaped him up before he died. Straight up smacked his knuckles with a ruler once. Uncle Shithead is still a shithead. Dude, your mom is a fucking superhero. Props to that lady. She's not perfect, but she is good where it matters. I wouldn't trade her for anyone. My uncle used to be the most racist person I knew and it drove me crazy, but he is an old white man and set in my ways. Is what he would say when confronted. It all changed the day his great-granddaughter was born. His granddaughter had married a black man and he was accepting until that baby was born. She had him wrapped around her pinky finger from her first breath. Since then there are several mixed children in the family. It's awesome to see the difference in his behavior. He genuinely loves them all and accepts the racially different spouses of his grandchildren and their children. If he hears anyone being racist he shuts it down. Oh man. I worked at a doctor's office a few years ago. We had a patient come in, white lady, carrying a newborn black baby. I mean, he was like 2 days old. We chatted a little bit, and she told me she had been on a waiting list to adopt a baby for years. She had gotten a call the night before, saying a woman in Detroit had just given birth and she wants to give up the baby. They asked if she wanted him and explained he was black. She was so excited. She got to the hospital right away. But she told me she had called her parents on the drive over to inform them of the good news. They were elated at first. Until they realized their grandchild was going to be black. She told me her parents said that she either chooses them or the baby, because they won't be related to ***Gigia. She said bye. Hung up the phone with no regrets. She was so in love with that baby. He was a cute little guy. It's kind of a personal rule for me that if anyone tells me I have to choose between them and someone else, they are automatically the person who loses out in that decision. It's a policy that has served me pretty well. But he is an old white man and is set in his ways. He is set in his ways, but he changed his ways. That's what he said when I would confront him. Turns out he could. I should have put quotations around that. College roommate was Muslim. Definitely was not a terrorist. Kinda already knew my paps was wrong about that, but when you live with someone for an entire year it takes you from kinda already knew to holy shit, that way of thinking is fucked up. I got into D&D in college, kinda surprised my dad when I told him Arkham was my dungeon master. No, it's not like that. We roleplay. We take turns rolling to initiate. We act out what we're doing sometimes with others in a group. And we can stay up all night. Why are you so red? I never made the choice really to be racist, but I grew up in South Mississippi and my family wasn't overtly racist, but they were the kind to say racist things behind closed doors and didn't allow us to watch TV shows such as The Cosby Show or Fresh Prince, and definitely no rap music in the house. I absolutely fell in love with a lot of black artists in the early 80s. I loved the hip-hop scene at the time, and holy shit, Fresh Prince was the best sitcom on television. I played football with 80% black guys and worked at Popeye's Chicken with over half the staff being black. I guess you can say my own real-world exposure, despite their attempt to shelter me, changed me. I cringe at some of the vernacular I used in my early youth, as the N-word was the same as black in my house. I literally was not raised to know that was a bad word. I'm glad that from the age of maybe 12 on I learned to love all people on my own. I remember my cousin and I were listening to Jimi Hendrix, and my grandma came into the room, and in Spanish said something along the lines of that boy could really play the guitar to my grandpa who was sleeping on the couch. Really jarring stuff. Bro, old Latinos are racist and it's so common. I have no idea where it comes from, but it's just everywhere.